Thank you for having me here today for my BYU Idaho Communications assignment. 20 some years ago, I left my modeling job at Dillard's to join the Marine Corps and serve my country. Yes, I know this is extreme, but so is the fact that 22 American military personnel, veterans, take their lives each day. These are men, women, sisters, brothers, daughters, sons. These are 22 families a day that are affected by the effects of combat, one of those effects being moral injury. Now, here's Daniel. He was a 24-year-old Marine who had been to Iraq twice. He was honorably discharged, and the second time he came back, he was clearly disturbed, and he ended up taking his own life on June the 10th, 2007. But his mother, although she was devastated, she didn't let it stop her. She decided to do something about it so that fewer people lose their sons or daughters, brothers, sisters, their loved ones. She created the Coffee Bunker in Tulsa, Oklahoma, for veterans to come to as a safe haven to connect with each other and understand, be with someone who understands. And she has been heard saying at the Coffee Bunker that she wonders if Daniel would still be here if the Coffee Bunker had been here yesterday, if it had been there before, so that her son could have gotten the help that he needed. So this is an example of what the community has done for our veterans. There are other projects like the Wounded Warrior Project and then the newly formed Patriot Hope Missions, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So, but we hear all of these things, but what is the church doing? Does the church have programs or an invite to come? Do you know who the veterans are in your congregation? Do you know their issues? Do you know if they need help? Do you know if they suffer? Do you even know if they have moral injury or PTSD or any of the other things that veterans are known to have? So before I get too much farther, let's establish what moral injury is. For a long time, it wasn't until 2009 that the VA and researchers separated PTSD from moral injury. It's two different things, and they've separated them and given them each their own definition. So with that, I'm going to invite you to read the definition of moral injury, and I'm going to be quiet for a few seconds because I really want you to internalize what moral injury is and how devastating it can be on a soldier. Now that we all have a definition of moral injury, who does moral injury affect? Of course, we know it affects the individual, but it also affects families, whole families, generations even of families, grandfathers, fathers, daughters, mothers, sisters, brothers. It affects the whole family, the family as a whole. And it also affects our community. It affects how safe we feel, what is our perception in our community of veterans. It affects our healthcare system because sometimes, especially if they're rural areas, there's not a lot of experienced people there who know how to treat the issues that a veteran may have. And so it's a community thing. So if we work at it to resolve it as a community, I think it will be more powerful. So what can your church do? Is your church willing to learn who your veterans are? Pray for your veterans. Talk to your veterans. Make sure that, be proactive. Make sure that they aren't suffering. so that you don't have a veteran in your congregation become one of those 22 a day. That's that terrible statistic. So I think the early church had a solution. They had a custom back then that anyone who had shed human blood was expected, regardless of the reason, to spend a year among the penitent, which is, close to what we would call today as a clergy or a pastor or a priest. But they were expected to spend a year working closely with them. So I propose that that's what we can do today in our churches. Our pastors can work closely with our veterans and their family for at least a year and help them be proactive about getting through this, especially if it is a moral injury. And they can make it through, and we can strengthen not only our families but also our congregation and our communities by serving our veterans in a time of need. I mean, they've served us and it's our turn to give back. So they've had a purpose. They've had a purpose of being a fighter, a warrior, a soldier. And now they come home and none of their skills apply in the civilian world. Yeah, they might have drive a truck and they can drive a truck in the civilian world, but the mentality is different in the civilian world than it is in the military. So they have to relearn. So what if we gave them a mission? What if the church could come up with a mission? And I have an idea for this mission. So we create what they call the post-buddy system. And with that, these families connect with each other and they pray for each other and they work like some people do when you go into the military on the buddy system. So we form these post-buddy systems in the communities where they live now. And we call it One Mission Under God, because we're going to give them a weapon. And this is the most awesome weapon that you've ever heard about. Wayne Whitaker said that prayer is the most underutilized tool that a Christian has. So what if we equip them with prayer strategy and the strategies of spiritual world versus the physical world that they've already learned to be a warrior in? They can become a warrior in the spiritual world. We have something very powerful in our hands. The word says to pray without ceasing. Anybody can pray from any place, old, young, by yourself, together, in a group. We can pray anywhere, anytime, and it does not cost a thing for us to pray other than our time to do it. So how are we going to implement this? So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to pray for each other. The veterans pray for the church and each other, and the church prays for the veterans to be healed and to get better from MI, moral injury. We create veteran small groups so that they can take care of themselves and support themselves within the same congregations. And then our small groups meet collectively monthly, and Heron's Crown Theater has donated the building for us to do this one day a month. And he said we can do anything we want to do. We can have classes, we can just hang out with each other, we can show a movie, we can figure out, how we want to help the community in some project that maybe one of the churches has. And then we ask the pastors to rotate at that monthly meeting so that we always have a pastor on staff in case a veteran is in need of a pastoral counsel. So if you are ready to begin the impact with me, please take my information and we'll work together to create a small group for your church. And then I want to invite you to take these home with you. Each of you will get one. Take these little soldiers home with you and remember, as a reminder, to pray for this veterans with possible moral injury and any other issue that they might have, but especially the ones in your congregation or your family. And I thank you once again for allowing me to do this presentation in your church.